Hey, welcome everybody. We're just letting people in, so it'll be a couple minutes as we do that. But thank you everyone for joining the call today. Really excited to have Judy back with us and chatting about naming rights. Definitely been a lot of interest from attendees to our sessions to bring Judy in and to have a discussion about this topic. I guess first of all, I always forget to introduce myself. Brad McCabe with Sponsor Circle, as a co-founder and managing partner of Sponsor Circle. And if you haven't been on our site in a while, I highly recommend you going to check it out. We've launched some new functionality in it, so we've got some really good AI built into our platform as a recommender engine. So it starts feeding you some great information about possible sponsor opportunities for you. So the more we know about you, the more we can send out information to you about potential opportunities. And want to talk about some of the other sessions we have coming up. On May 19th, we've got Brian Wiley and David Domitrovic coming to speak about the fact that there's a change in cookies and how iOS is tracking audience and what the opportunity is in that cookieless world for sponsorship. And then June 16th, we've got Adam Mitchell from IMI's Sponsor Pulse talking about their platform for sponsorship intelligence and how that can build into your strategy and help you as a brand or as a property better fit into the market and sort of prove what you've got available. So that being said, really happy to have Judy Haber here from Performance Sponsorship Group. I know many of you probably know Judy quite well, and we've had an opportunity to chat with her before here. I will let you introduce yourself, Judy.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Hi, everyone. I think I recognize some of your names, and welcome back. And hi to all those people who are new to me and maybe even new to the business of naming rights for primarily municipal assets is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And maybe we'll start in that order. We'll start with the good. And I'd like to encourage you to please ask questions. I generally like it to be conversational, interactive, because I can certainly share my experience and will share my experiences. But I know a lot of you have had similar experiences and have lots of valuable information that you can share with your colleagues as well. So hands up, please ask questions at any time, and Brad will manage that process for us. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good, and I wish I could see some of your faces because I know there would be smiles coming my way here. The good is, as I was just saying to Brad, about literally 15 minutes ago, a prospect called me and expressed interest in naming rights for an arena, an ice pad, priced at $14,500 per year for a 10-year term in Devon, Alberta. So that doesn't happen all the time, right? So that's the good. The good is last night we sold a water station for $3,500. It's going to be called a XYZ refueling station for a 10-year term for a facility we're working on in Bracebridge. And the other good in that story is that that was leveraged by our naming rights partner, which we hope to announce in the next month in Bracebridge, which is a $4.2 million deal with a local company who's participating both in cash and a little bit in kind, helping us with our capital budget, construction budget. Those are good. Good is when my client, and when I say client, any town staff member collaborates and says, sure, you can add that to the package. So those are good stories and makes us smile. So we also have bad stories and really ugly stories that we could possibly share too. So what's a bad story? A bad story is, no, it's actually ugly. when you've sold something, so council has approved it, they've approved the price, the prospect, the benefits and entitlements, you bring them the deal and they say, oh, did we really offer them that sign on the Gardner? Well, we've changed our mind. Okay, that's ugly. Bad is, and all of this has happened to us over the last 25 years, and I'm sure it's happened to all of you in one way or another if you've been in the business long enough. Bad would be, again, council approves some benefits like passes to a recreation facility that you've sold naming rights to, and the use of the facility for corporate hospitality, like maybe a skating Christmas party. And then council gets the offer, and then they say, no, we don't want to give them passes, and no, we're not giving them benefits and entitlements. Then you have to go back to the buyer and say, they want your $1 million, but they've changed their mind about the benefits and entitlements. You gotta laugh. If you're in this business long enough, you've gotta laugh. So the good, bad, and ugly. And then I'll just very briefly mention our experience since March of 2020. I've shared with Brad, it's been the best, are we 14 months yet? Yeah, we're in May. Best 14 months of my career. So how is that possible? And I would say it's possible because we are selling community. And no one's leaving their community. And companies are investing more and more in their backyard. I know you've heard me say this before, but even more so now, because that's where their employees live. That's where their children live and play, and their mothers and fathers. And so we are finding companies now, and we're in multiple communities across the country, are absolutely wanting to invest back into community facilities. So that's one reason I think we've had a good run. And I think also we have quite deliberately targeted companies that are doing well. So we all know there are some companies who have done exceedingly well during COVID. You know, I could list them. It's, for those of you who've been following me on LinkedIn, you know, agriculture, you know, anyone growing anything that we can eat, they're doing well. Anyone in the design business, the construction business, the home building, the land developers. We've done plumbing, we've done electric deals with electrical contractors, and cash. These aren't in-kind deals. Grocery stores, home fitness equipment. I mean, you could probably put together like lumber. Is anyone trying to do some work at their cottage? You can't get lumber. So, you know, one of the tricks of the trade obviously is going where the money is. So it's, other than that, I really don't know what to say, except business is good in sponsorship. The ugly piece of it is, and forgive me for framing it that way, is let me rephrase that. The challenging part is counsel. And I think I've just put a smile on some of your faces. The conversation has to be about counsel. Everybody on this call is in the business of corporate sponsorship, and more specifically naming rights. We've been charged with a task. There isn't a council across the country that isn't looking at naming rights. They need revenue. So they've hired us, you, to go price, package, and sell town and city assets, but they don't really understand the business. They just want the money. So we find a lot of our role is in educating council. So we've worked in environments where people, they've come to us and say, well, we should be generating $250,000 a year. And this is a population of 5,000 people in the entire town. So our ugly role is, really, how did you get to that number? Like, that's a huge number for a population of 5,000 people. So sometimes it's the delivery of reality, and reality can be achieved by doing some comparatives for them, because they're all out there. Many of these deals are public. Look at other markets, similar size, what they've commanded for their community center, for their arena, for secondary assets within the building. So some education is important before you start selling. So I see some hands. Brad, are you managing that, or am I?
No, so I've got it. So I mean, I think John's already jumped in with a question about, the difference of approaching an existing building versus a new build, a new facility. So I think there's kind of getting right into the weeds of it already.
Yeah, good. I mean, everybody on this call probably knows as much about this business as I do. So I'm not surprised we're going right for the jugular, because I certainly did as well. From a corporate naming rights point of view, if you're selling a new build, it's obviously sexy. And my recommendation is be out pricing and packaging and educating well in advance of the shovel going in the ground as possible. And the advantage, like we had in Bracebridge, same in Pickering, is that the naming rights sponsor can participate, if possible, with in-kind if their category is appropriate. But you can't get out of the gate early enough with a new build. Old build, and we've sold buildings that are 35 years. There is a discount, particularly if it's already been named twice and this is its third name. So again, that's your role in educating council that it in fact isn't worth $100,000 per year, which it may have sold for 10 years ago. It's now worth $85,000 per year because it's a name change.
Yeah. Any tips on putting a fresh coat of paint on that when you're actually going out to market with it?
That's a good question. Jennifer, any recommendations? Anyone done that? Has anyone on the call sold a building that had another name, or is trying to sell a building, like even if it's got a Rotary name? Any recommendations? Because we certainly faced it in Leamington. We had a Rotary facility renamed, and Rotary pushed back. One person who's 98 years old on Rotary pushed back. The new Rotary says, oh my God, go and take the money. But love to hear if anyone else has had experiences.
We might get that as they jump in.
Sure.
But just thinking about are there different assets that you've seen over the last 14 months that have changed in terms of what's being valued and what's saleable versus what you would have seen pre-pandemic? No,
nothing's changed in that regard, except the appetite for money is more alive now than ever. And I think the appetite to give is more alive than ever.
Yeah, I could definitely see that from the fact that they're not spending money elsewhere. Nobody's travel budgets have gone down, so there are those other elements. And as we're looking at, there's still an audience, even if they're not attending the facility, the audience still exists. And I think that's some of the challenges I've heard, from different people in the industry. They're seeing it as, do I give back money, or do I find other value when people can't come to the facility? Conversations that way.
We haven't heard that since March of 2020, and we started selling as you know, Leamington and Bracebridge and Devon, right really when the pandemic started. And not once have we heard from entrepreneurs who are largely our big supporters, small business. No one's made any noise. Oh my God, the facility's not open. Can I get a discount, or can I get an extension? Generally in this business, in communities, like the call I just got prior to this was from, he sounded maybe 25, and he runs, I didn't even understand what kind of company it is. It's some sort of hose, underground hose in towns. And I have faced this reality for 25 years. Do not judge a book by its cover. Like, I thought, okay, he's calling me, maybe, he wants to buy a dressing room, or, I mean, he's agreed over the phone, the first time we met, to $150,000. No problem. So entrepreneurs in our country, young and old, are the backbone of this business. And again, I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm not getting the money from the Scotiabanks. I'm getting the money from farmers, builders, people in lumber. You wouldn't think they had a dime. And believe me, they'll cut checks for $250,000 in their community. Great PR, nice, they get patted on the back at the grocery store. I think there's a little bit of that. Truth is, most of them have never been asked for money in their community.
And I think there's a definite element of that, number 3, number 4 brand who is more eager, and sometimes they want that placement versus the Coke or the Scotiabank or RBCs of the world, where they're everywhere. So if you get somebody who wants to come in and put their name out and really have a showcase, this can be a great opportunity.
Again, in our business, community, municipal, you're going to get more money from the person who owns the independent grocer or the Sobeys. You're going to get more money from them to do a private label deal in your facility than you will from Pepsi and Coke. I mean, I can't really remember the last time I did a deal with a national brand. Yet we're selling 7-figure deals and 6 figures. So yes, they want to sell, our compliments water, and maybe if there's a canteen, you can bundle in hamburgers and hot dogs and coffee and chips, because they've got all that private label. And if you can bundle in a business relationship, you're talking $10,000, $15,000 per year for a 10, 15-year term. And yeah, they'll get category exclusivity, but generally there's only 1 or 2 grocery stores in our towns anyway.
True. Yeah, they're the standouts, and they're getting all your business.
Yeah.
Christina had a question, and I don't know, Christina, if you want to turn on your mic or camera and jump in and just provide some clarification on it. Talking about the value of the intangible for first net zero or groundbreaking new facility. Maybe you can provide some clarification for that.
Hello, hi Judy. Hi everybody. Judy already knows what I'm talking about, so I'll just jump right to it. We have a new community center coming up in a couple of years, and on paper the valuation, and it'll come out probably around $1 million, like $100,000 for 10 years. But the more I'm learning about it, the more I'm talking to everyone here feels like it's worth a lot more. There's a lot of firsts. It's like the first net zero building, the first community center in 10 years in Vaughan, the first like there's a lot of first, which gives it this clout. With that, that's not on paper. And so I guess my question is, how do you value that intangible in dollars, especially when people are telling you that the intangible is like 5-6 times what the actual evaluation is coming out at?
Absolutely. Great question. I mean, when we sold Lubbock and Pickering, I went in and asked for 5 million because I knew he had the capacity. I mean, Christina, I love you dearly. So you can't ask $100,000 for that building. Like, and we can always go down, but we can't go up. You've got to go out with a $5 million ask.
Yeah.
And where you have your flexibility is in your term. If someone freaks out 5 million, oh my God, okay, so collect it over 20 years. I mean, we're just doing a deal now, a 20-year term. It's $500,000 from a company that I thought there's no way this guy's going to write us a check for $500,000, but they're paying for it over 20 years. So we're getting $25,000 a year. That's okay.
Right.
So that's number one. You've got to go out with that building. I mean, that location, and you're right. The intangibles, and for all the deals we do, the intangibles worth 5, 6, 7 times the tangible. Christina.
Yeah. Okay.
We get so caught up in these valuations, and it makes me crazy because valuations only add up to so much. It's all about eyeballs. Yet our buyers are buying because of our eyeballs. They're buying because they want to give back. They want to be a big guy in our community. So that's what I say about valuation. And given where you're located, go out big, and then let's figure out, who has the capacity that has not been approached. Now, I'm going to add something else for Christina and all of you. The deal that we're doing in Devon, Alberta, has bundled in a business relationship.
Yes.
So, I mean, like, I know we've talked about this, and I know, like, for example, and they know this, like, have you done a Coke or Pepsi deal, Christina? Do you have a pouring rights deal?
Not in Vaughan.
Okay.
Not in Vaughan, we don't, but I have in my past life, yeah.
Right. Well, that could be the city of Vaughan business is worth millions for pouring rights. Wait, I lost my...
We have a vending agreement. We don't have any pouring.
Right.
We don't have anywhere to pour.
Right.
We just have a vending agreement.
I lost my train of thought, but maybe it'll come. Oh, the supplier.
Is that deal in Devon, do you have a precedent? Like, is that deal in Devon done?
It was done.
Can we see it?
It was done in March. You'll see it on LinkedIn. Council, we're waiting for them to approve the design of a new arena. So it'll be hopefully next week. It's coming. But because
the more I can show, the better.
I know, but think about too, like there are multiple deals done across the country with co-ops, grocery stores in Alberta, and the Sobeys and the IGAs. They have exclusives, and they're selling our compliments or hot dogs, or those are supplier relationships.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
A couple questions from Derek and Leanne, just about pricing out and valuation. So Leanne's is, do you do it based on the cost of the build, which I think is, one of those challenges about it. That's focused on the need from your end as opposed to the value of the actual asset. And then Derek's was focused on just how to take a decommissioned arena that's being refurbished and figuring out the value for that. Do you have any suggestions on where to start on valuation?
Well, let me start with Leanne. valuation and, you know, how do we price things? So, and again, you know, every year is, you know, I learn maybe even every day I learn something new. But like the Lebovic, you know, my client wanted 5 million. So I went and asked Joe for 5 million and got it. I just did something similar in Bracebridge. We're building, you know, a brand new community center arena and a very lush outdoor park reading area. And the costs of the outdoor area, which is stunning, is now $350,000. So I said to the client, okay, I'll go out and ask for $500,000. And it's now, the letter of agreement's now just waiting to be signed by the president. So we're getting the $500,000. So yes, you can price things based on your costs. I mean, you know, this is not a science. There is no one right answer for anything. There's many answers. And so much of it comes down to your skill, your experience, who your prospects are, and what council will allow you to do.
And I guess a lot of that, is it coming with you know, pure chutzpah and going in and going, okay, here's what we want, or how much background research are you doing about the prospect to assess what they could actually spend?
Well, everyone on this call has chutzpah. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the naming rights business. I mean, it's a new business, but it's been around for a long time. But municipal naming rights, you know, we are making a difference now, all of us on this call. So all the power to everyone here who commits to continue to learn from one another. Of course, you can't go in blind, but sometimes you are blind. Like this call I just had 15 minutes ago. I don't know who this guy is. I don't even know what he does. Yet, you know, I asked some questions. Do you do business with the town? And, oh, that's difficult, he says. I want to. So I find out, oh, well, who does in your category? And, you know, then he told me he'd loved hockey and he grew up in the community. And I said, well, I still have this available. And so I went in high. Maybe I didn't go in high enough. So if possible, yes, you find out what their capacity is. And different categories, as we know, have different capacities. But sometimes you got to wing it because you have no idea how much money is in the sewage category, another category I'm talking to. But they're a supplier to your town.
And do you get many prospects actually asking for evidence or to showcase how you've come up with the value?
Never, never, never. So what was Derek's question?
Derek was refurbishing a, let me just go right to it here. It's got a potential deal, take over repurposing and management of a decommissioned arena, and it would include the rights, selling the name rights to the building to raise money for roughly $1 million worth of renovations. And he's trying to figure out how to value the naming rights.
Well, you already know, I think, Derek, that you've got $1 million worth of renovations, so you're not going to go below $1 million. And if this is the Derek, I think it is, you know, your market is extremely valuable. So I would look at directional signage and on-building signage and have an examination of how many eyeballs are going to see that sign. You know, we don't want to underprice ourselves. And again, you know, depending on how much you can push the envelope, is there a way to leverage other town or city assets if you bundle that into this building? Can you, that will have an increase value in your ask if you can involve them not only in this building, but other buildings.
And there was another question regarding dealing with council, and the fact that council wants to keep the community name but get the money in from naming rights. Have you run into this before, and how have you dealt with it?
Well, I have just recently, because it was the Memorial Arena, and council, wants to retain the Memorial name. But I advise them against that in terms of ideally selling naming rights without the Memorial name. So we are identifying a location within the new community center arena to tribute the history of the Memorial Arena with we call it a Hockey Hall of Fame. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I have a call with a prospect for naming rights for that Hockey Hall of Fame. Again, a company and an individual who grew up in that community and wants to tribute the superstars. So 2 answers: bring the memorial or the history into the building, find a place to showcase that story, and sell it.
And Leanne's asking about if you had issues with offering other city assets into an agreement, any pushback? And I guess from your end, are you offering assets that people don't want? I think that'd be the
Well,
biggest
I guess what I'm really referencing is, for example, in Sedgwick, Alberta, and Wynyard, Saskatchewan, we wanted to do as large of a deal as we could with the co-op, the grocery store. And Sedgwick owns a golf course. And I'm actually in discussions with Stony Plain about this as well, Stony Plain, Alberta, that if we can leverage other town assets, and we're talking, for example, to a co-op, can we bundle in, the Petro for the Zamboni or the Petro for the lawn? I find I spend most of my sleepless nights thinking about how to fatten up my deals, that it's not just what's on the surface, but what else we can throw in there so that I can assure myself that I'm going to get a yes before I even speak to a prospect. Because we all know what prospects want. So it's our job to manage council and get them to approve to include that. And our experience is you will get the approval if the ask is substantial enough. So Christina, for example, if she went out for $10 million, like everybody can be bought. Is it 10 million or is it higher? And then the ability to leverage a category that the city is currently doing business with. So am I getting off topic, Brad?
No, I think that makes sense. The fact that it comes back to what you were talking about earlier is once you've set a price, you can't go back up. So if you've taken assets out and you're going to try and sweeten the deal by bringing additional assets in, I've found that doesn't move the price back up. You're not going to get more money out of them. It's easier to start removing things if they're going to negotiate. And I don't know if you've had similar experience.
Well, and again, assets historically, maybe have been classified as, you get your name on this, or, that's not really an asset to a company. Companies can buy billboards or buy print anywhere they want, anytime they want. You've got to shift this around a little bit and think about what differentiates you from other advertising opportunities in your community. This is not an advertising buy. This is community affairs. This is, in some cases, a B2B, a B2C, being the big kid in town. If you're an automotive and you brand something, or a real estate firm and you brand something in a town or city, you're going to be top of mind 365 days of the year. But including other town or city assets and putting their name in the community center or the theater is nice. But I don't know if that would help me close a deal.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those elements is you've got to listen and listen to where they want to be, because yeah, they can certainly buy the audience in Facebook for 1/10, 1/100th the price that you're pricing out a naming rights deal, so they can get the reach. And I find that sponsorship and naming rights certainly provides a different level of relevance to that reach. So when it talks about community activity and engagement. So we missed a question earlier, just going back to it, and you kind of talked about some different assets and taking things that aren't necessarily facilities, whether it's looking at naming the Zamboni or somebody who's at a university, a chair or a fellowship. Do you find that the process is different approaching those types of assets?
Well, funny you mentioned a Zamboni. Zambonis and score clocks are really easy assets to sell. So don't give them away too cheap and don't give them away too soon. I've quite deliberately held on to our Zamboni in Devon because I want to sell the big stuff first. And in some cases, they will get category exclusivity. So you don't want to sell anything small, $5,000 a year for a 10-year term to an automotive when an automotive could be buying a rink at $15,000 per year for a 10-year term. I've never had the pleasure of selling a university chair. So I don't really have much to say about that other than it's obviously about your prospect list and their capacity and showing, if it's 2.5 million or 5 million, what the return on investment for that is. And that return on investment isn't about the sponsor or the donor. That return on investment is, this is how many more people we can educate. This is how many more kids can go to art class, enabling us to double our capacity. That's how you sell those types of products.
And I guess the question that we got in advance about, philanthropically naming something where you're getting a gift versus having somebody corporately come more of a sponsorship style marketing naming. And thinking of Lebovics as a great example where I'm assuming that was more of a philanthropic gift when you did that.
It was his foundation.
Yeah. So I mean, do you find that dealing with that, there's two different approaches?
No, it's still about ego. Some of us are in markets large enough where there are individuals who have foundations. They are alive and well and giving away money, particularly now, and mental health is obviously a priority. It's also about relationship building. And, I didn't go directly to Joe. I went to his right-hand man, who then helped me get to Joe. So some of you are in markets where people have so much money that they've started foundations and they have to give their money away. So that's very market specific. But the approach is somewhat the same. It's the research that you need to do, and who should be making that call. Should it be you? Should it be the mayor? Should it be a council member? Council needs to participate in this process too. They're not there just to say, oh, you go do this, you go do that. And, some of us, we need to be a little stronger with our work with council, who say, I want 5 million for that. It's so easy for someone to say that. So, maybe you should give some consideration to saying, can you help me? And we have found when you use that language, can you help me? There's an appetite to help. They don't want to do it necessarily, but if they can help us, then I think that can be very effective. And I think all of us should give some consideration to how best to approach our council members and talk to them about your role and your challenges and your goals and objectives, and see if they can help.
And that feeds right into the question that Mike had just posted up, about creating that prospect funnel. And I know in the past conversations we've had, you found, really good value in having that person on council, allow you to use their name when you're making a call. Do you have any other recommendations on how you're building and growing that funnel?
Well, you've brought up a good point about using someone's name. So once you have identified a naming rights prospect and done a deal for that matter with him or her, they likely have companies they do business with, whether it's their bank or their insurance or their wealth management, or they tend to have a lot of suppliers. And if you can call one of those suppliers and say, oh, Jim whoever, Jim Bishop suggested calling you, like I just did with a lawyer who managed the naming rights agreement on behalf of the buyer in Bracebridge. I just spoke to the lawyer and I said, we're just waiting for that signed agreement. And he said, oh, is that the only reason you're calling? I mean, he knew I was going to be asking him for money. So again, it's title sponsors, naming rights sponsors are important, that you don't rush into having the wrong partner, and make sure that you've got the right partner who is participatory, just like we want council to be participatory. Otherwise, you're going to be out there alone, and this is not an easy business. You want the right people to be engaged, help you get your job done, similar to the development world, the fundraising world. They find chairs and they find people who have given and who will help open doors. We're in somewhat of a similar business.
What do you find is your typical sales cycle for working on different assets?
Well, Brad, as you know, we're pretty aggressive here. So, and I generally, by the time I close a deal and get a municipality or town or city to hire us, generally, I'd say about 90% of the time, I've already done enough work that I know who I'm going to sell the asset to. So we've worked on 4-month sales cycles. That was Leamington. That was a couple $2 million. Bracebridge is a year cycle. I had a letter of intent within a month, and that's 4.2 million. Devon is a 4-month sales cycle. The sales cycle shouldn't be long. It isn't for us because, again, in advance of taking something on, I do enough research to know who I'm going to sell it to, coupled with knowing what council will allow. If I find that I'm just getting a no, then I know that's not a client that would be good for me.
Yeah, and I've been on enough calls with you, and you've got a fantastic approach, and I haven't seen a lot of other people do it in the same way. And Jennifer's busy putting her thumbs up, but you do a fantastic job of being able to identify within the first call whether they've got the capacity or interest in the conversation. And I guess maybe can you give some insight to one, how you determine whether they've got the capacity or it's just them trying to politely say no to you so they don't have to continue the conversation. And is there advice in that, or is it just a skill set that you've developed?
Well, yes, I have some advice. Ask for the no. I've been selling virtually since 1998. There have been many cases where I not only don't meet the client, the town or the city that have hired me, I don't meet the buyers either. I just get the deals done. So you do develop a skill set for selling over the phone, and identifying whether or not you do need a coach before you speak to the decision maker. It depends on what you've got in your toolkit. Do you have somebody who's suggested calling him? That's you're in. That's hi, my name is Judy Haber. Sam, blah, 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 suggested calling. That's my qualifier. Or hi, I'm Judy Haber. I work with the town of Devon or the town of Richmond Hill or the town of Whitby. That's your qualifier. Because in some cases you're talking to people who either want permits from the town or they do business with the city. So there is a qualifier in the first 10 seconds. And I have gotten no's because I get to price point very quickly. And I also talk about other stuff that perhaps has been sold or that others are considering. I always start at the high end, but if the overall naming rights is sold, I'll tell them that. That adds credibility to the conversation and to me as well. And then talk about secondary assets and then shut up and give them an opportunity to, because I do ask, what is your capacity? You know, I have this, does that blow you out of the water? So it's qualify and then ask questions.
And I think it's been very effective, and you do a fantastic job of it. And it really, I think, helps you stay with those warmer prospects rather than having the the polite Canadian drag along where it's, oh, call me again in 90 days. When you start realizing, okay, you spend.
Oh well, that's a no. That's a no. That's a no. You're dealing with people. We're not talking about calling Scotiabank. We're talking about calling companies that work in our community that have a secretary. Some of them don't. They're either buying that week or they're not. This particular rink, an automotive said, oh, can I put a car in? And I spoke to the architect, got all that done, tried to call him back 3-4 times. I never leave messages. He knows it's me because I've got his cell, so he can see that it's me calling. So I went ahead and sold the rink to someone else. Guys, we've been selling long enough. We know the difference between a buyer and someone who's just wasting our time and doesn't have the ability to say no. Now I can go back to him and say, after this deal gets done, which was 15 minutes ago, hopefully I'll have my email from him when we're done. I'll go back to automotive and this time I'm going to leave a voicemail. Say, just wanted to update you. Maybe he'll call back, maybe he won't.
Yeah, I think it becomes that mix, and I've seen a variety of different sales approaches where you call, don't leave a message, and you go through that process, and some introduction of new technologies where it's okay, maybe you do a short video or some other element to try and create some pizzazz to it.
Well, what's interesting about the last 14 months, and I think this may continue for quite some time, is you're now calling people on their cell. So you gotta get their cell, and they can see that it is you. So you've got to become even more specialized now than ever. You've really got to figure out why you're calling that person and why they want to listen to you before you dial out. You've got to have your strategy. You got to spend those nights thinking about, how am I going to turn this guy or girl on to my offer?
And think back to a comment you made just a couple minutes ago about going out and getting the deal done independently, and then bringing it back to council. And I'm thinking about an arena that you're well aware of, north of Toronto, where they've sold the naming rights to it twice, and council's turned it down twice. And the frustration in that. How much groundwork and education do you have to do with council to say, okay, when I do this, you've already pre-agreed to it, or is it still volatile regardless?
So I'm sorry, there's an arena in the GTA where
North of the GTA,
oh,
I know that they've publicly announced twice that they had
right.
naming
Okay.
rights for it, and council's
Yeah.
turned it down both times.
Right. Sounds like a disaster zone.
Right.
The good, bad, and that's ugly. Good luck to that community raising money, being in the business of corporate sponsorship. I don't know if it was an employee that worked on that account or it was outside counsel, but somebody didn't do the groundwork in terms of educating council, whether it's talking to them one-on-one or meeting with them as a group. Like, that should never, ever happen. That's very damaging to our business. And it's our responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen to us.
And I guess the sort of associated with that is the desire for a lot of municipalities to go to RFP.
Yes, we've seen that. I mean, City of Edmonton just issued an RFP for 2 of their rec centers. They're hoping buyers come forward. We've worked in many markets where the RFP method hasn't worked. So they get to us somehow and we sell it for them. And I'm happy to hear from anyone in the room if they're familiar with that working. I don't know anywhere where that's worked. And particularly if you want to sell high, if you are in the 5 million plus category, and some of us on this phone are in the 5 million plus category, I don't think you're going to get there with the RFP. Like, as I said yesterday at FEO, Festival Events in Ontario, people are dialing you to give you money. That's generally not how this business works. This business works by you dialing out. You can post on your website. I've seen many municipalities do that. We have this, we have that. I urge you to do that once you know that you're going to start selling, so that you have full disclosure, so that the community knows you are in the business of corporate sponsorship and naming rights, so that when you do a deal with Dairy Queen, Dunkin' Donuts, or Tim Hortons doesn't come back and say, wait a minute, I didn't know this was available, yet you've covered your butt because you've posted on your website that you are in the business of naming rights. So I think it's good information to share with your constituents, but it's not how you sell.
There was another thing you touched upon earlier, that some people are in the interest that they want to be in a good position with council because they've got other business they want to do in the city, and they see this as part of contributing to the community. But if they're can it be seen as a quid pro quo? Right? I'm going to give you money for the naming rights, and you're going to give me a developer permit. Have you run into those kinds of issues?
Well, no, not verbally. All developers want to make nice noise with council, and they all invest in the community. All developers, and land developers and home builders. They know that that's their responsibility. Call it quid pro quo, it's their responsibility to build community, literally and figuratively. Other categories where you're bundling in a business relationship, an exclusive, if it's a current contractor, if it's a current, let's call it plumber, that currently has all the plumbing business in your town, and wants to be involved in your existing or new build for a 10-year term, and you can structure language that gives him first right of refusal for ongoing business within the town, as long as they price their products at an industry competitive rate. Alternatively, we just did a deal where the language was, for the next 10 years, the products and services, the increase is at the cost of living. There's a formal term for that, but that was the language in the agreement. So there will be an incremental increase to the cost of buying their products and services, but it's at the cost of whatever the increase in cost of living is per year.
Yeah, so it really requires a thought process to make sure that there's a bit of a CYA in the contract, so that you're not bound to something that isn't feasible.
Again, it starts with council. It starts with your role educating council, because again, they sit there and say, go get us $1 million or go get us $5 million, whatever the number is. It's your responsibility to ask questions, and to educate them that you can get $500,000 if you do this, you can get $1 million if you do this, and get $2 million if you do this. And like Christina said, some comparables, and show them, oh, well, they did this in Stony Plain, or they did this in Whitby, or they did this in Hamilton, or show them other markets where these things are being done.
Apparently, you're being volunteered to create a training video to teach council.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting concept, but thank you for the opportunity. Every council that I've worked with over the past 25 years is different. They're all different. Some are better than others. Some are more willing to help. Some are more willing to move and be open with new ideas. So I don't think a generic video is the answer. It's a conversation.
Well, and actually that kind of works well into the question that Christina had about collateral that you're bringing into your sales conversation. And, do you find value in bringing video elements or sales decks or leave behinds?
No, especially now. And I think this will be the future. People just aren't wasting time. Less is more. The only value that I bring to the conversation is what I mentioned earlier, is I'm working with the town or the city. Sam on council suggested I call, or ex-developer who's naming the facility suggested I call. I mean, I learned this in 1990 when we brought on Shoppers Drug Mart as the title sponsor of the Toronto Marathon. All I had to do was call Shearing Plow and Nova Farm and Apotex and 42 of their suppliers of Shoppers and say, David Bloom suggested I call. End of conversation. How can I help you?
Yeah, and I think it's doing the work on the seller's end to figure out who are those people that are going to command that level of respect and interest, whether that's a chair or somebody on council or a lead person in the community.
Yes, and that's why you need to talk to your council members, or and if it's not council, if they're not participatory, if they're just, you feel that they're just giving you a job to do, then give some consideration to community members, people who own businesses that you want involved. And maybe it's not just a big check, maybe it's a small check, but they have terrific relationships. I have found someone at TELUS who's on the Rotary, who is helping me, giving me, inside scoop on all the guys in that community. I mean, he's amazing. I call him my coach. He sees my cell number come up and I say, hi, coach.
Well, and it's great to have that, and the fact that everybody still needs a coach, regardless of what level they're at. There's
So
always
do I.
things you can learn. Yeah.
So do I. So anyway, we are approaching the end, Brad.
Yeah.
I do have a deal I need to close.
No,
So,
I certainly appreciate your time. It's always great chatting with you, Judy, and I know there's a lot of engagement and people already asking for follow-up session at some point, so maybe we can set that up. Thank you. Thanks everybody for attending. So information about the upcoming sessions on May 19th for cookieless advertising and the effect on sponsorship will be coming out. This will be, or has been recorded and will be posted to our website. So we'll be posting out a link to that following here, as well as, assuming Judy's fine, contact information to reach out to Judy if you're not already connected to her, if you have any follow-up questions for Judy or myself. And again, thank you for participating, Judy. It's been awesome.
Great. Look forward to working with all of you sometime in the near future. Good luck. Push that envelope. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Judy.
Bye, Christina. Call me.